Welcome to episode 8 of the Exponential Performance Podcast. It is so good to have you here with me today. In this episode, we sit down and chat with physiotherapist Josh Ong. We cover a whole bunch of stuff, so let's not delay this any further. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Exponential Performance Podcast. Join sports scientist and performance coach Maddie Graham to find out how to train smarter and maximize your performance no matter who you are.
Hey Endurance Junkies, welcome to episode 8 of the Exponential Performance Podcast. It is so good to have you here. Now, you might notice that I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. I'm a bit blocked up, so please excuse my horsey, blocked up voice. I hope it's not too bad for you. Anyway, it's not going to be about me today. We're going to sit down and talk with physiotherapist Josh Ong from Focused Physio. He's an extremely good physiotherapist, highly rate him, and I emailed out to all of our listeners and asked for questions. So what I've got is a number of questions that I sit down and ask him, and he gives some really good, honest answers. But before we do that, I want to know a little bit more about you. What do you do while you're listening to the Exponential Performance Podcasts? Are you exercising? Are you on your bike cranking out some intervals? Are you running on a treadmill? Are you running outside in the park? Are you skiving off at work while you're listening to this? Or are you on a long haul car ride? Let me know. I want to know what you do while you listen to the Exponential Performance Podcast. Post a comment below. It doesn't matter what platform you are on. If you're on YouTube, whack a comment in the comments section. If you're on iTunes, head down, post it there. If you're on SoundCloud, chuck a comment in. I want to know what you're up to while listening to the Exponential Performance Podcasts. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you can go over to iTunes and post a review for the Exponential Performance Podcast. This just helps with the ranking, and it's just going to help with the publicity of this podcast so it can be more sustainable into the future. So if you want to help the podcast out, please head over to iTunes. It has to be iTunes. Give me a rating and leave me a comment in the review section. It would be greatly appreciated. Now, without further ado, let's get into the interview with Josh Ong, physiotherapist extraordinaire. We're lucky enough today to have physiotherapist Josh Ong on the line from Focus Physio. So welcome, Josh. It's awesome to have you here, mate.
Thanks very much for having me.
So give us a little bit of a background, a bit of a rundown on where you've come from in terms of your, physiotherapy and training. A bit of a background before we launch into the listener questions today.
Cool. So I started my physio training, health science in University of Otago in 2005. Went on to do my physiotherapy degree and finished in 2008. Following which, got a job in a private practice in Dunedin. Worked there for 9 months. After that, at the end of the year, with the new elections and changes in the government, I got made redundant due to the ACC changes. After that, I thought I'll go back to study. So I applied to go back and study to do some postgrad stuff in the uni. But I was quite fortunate to get a job again soon after I got made redundant. So because I had been accepted to study and also had a job, I thought I'll just knuckle down and work and study full time. So I did that, finished my my master's in 2012. So that was 3 years of working and studying full time.
Awesome, mate. What did you look at for your master's?
Right. So my master's was endorsed in manipulative physiotherapy. So sort of specific. Looking at diagnosis and treatment of the body, spine, and joints, and just rehab principles as well.
Yeah, nice. So what we've got today is we've got some questions from our listeners that I just wanted to ask you. So hopefully that you're able to answer them and give them a little bit more information about them.
Sure, we'll definitely do what we can.
Yeah, awesome, mate. So the first question we got from a listener is cracking your neck or your back, and I guess any joints in general, such as your fingers, when you pop your knees and you pop your fingers out, is that bad for you if you're cracking your joints?
Cool. So I guess first of all, let's talk about what the cracking is, right? So the cracking is just gas. The pop that you hear is gas. It's pretty much just carbon dioxide. It's a release of pressure. So that's when you wind the joint up or you put increased pressure. The pop is just the release of pressure. Think about a straw. You're holding two ends of a straw and just winding the straw up. The pressure builds up to the middle, and you can just pop the straw right in the middle. So that's pretty much what the mechanism of the cracking or manipulation is. So cracking, I don't believe cracking in itself is bad, because sometimes, yes, we do need to release pressure off certain joints and trying to get any restrictions in, say, for example, the spine moving a little bit better. However, too much cracking isn't that good a thing. So when you crack your joints, you are stretching the ligaments around it to a certain extent as well. And so when you crack the joints, you stretch the ligaments around it. Too much cracking, you ended up keeping on stretching the ligaments around it as well. And so the body just goes in a vicious cycle. You crack your joints, you loosen the ligaments. It feels nice for a while, but then the body goes, oh, hang on, I'm a little bit looser now. And if the muscles if the muscles around it are not ready enough to stabilize the joint around it, then the body just goes, right, I don't like this, I'm going to tighten up even more. And then you feel stiff again. And then you go, right, I'm actually really stiff. Right, I need to crack myself again. So you have to use an even bigger range or even bigger force to crack the joint. And then, right, cool, feels nice for a while. But then the body goes, right, I'm actually a little bit looser now. Don't like this very much. I'm going to tighten up even more to protect myself. So you this whole vicious cycle of stretch, tighten, stretch, tighten, stretch, tighten. So unless you reload the muscle or strengthen the muscle or protect the joints around the muscle, protect the joints after you crack your joints, it's always going to have this vicious cycle of stretching and tightening, stretching and tightening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Hey, and you know how, like, say, there's like that old wives' tale out there about if you crack your knuckles, crack your fingers, that'll lead to arthritis. Is that part of it as well? Is that sort of or is that just a bit of a myth?
Yeah, I would say definitely that's an old wives' tale. I mean, cracking your joints won't give you arthritis unless, like I was saying before, you stretch your ligaments until they're so loose. Then you've got you don't have any stability there potentially.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't go as far to saying as arthritis as well, but it could lead eventually because you've got nothing to hold you together.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're requiring, say, like every morning you wake up and your neck is so tight that you do, end up giving it a wee stretch and a wee crack here and there, and it feels really good afterwards, what would you recommend that person does? Do they need to do some strengthening around that area, or do they need to do some stretching on other areas?
All right. So, I was just asked this question last week actually for some reason. So there's always a threshold where you stretch the joint to a certain point before you get the pop, before you get so much pressure till you get that cavitation or that pop. So what could be quite helpful is that you stretch the joint, or stretch. Say, let's take your neck for example. You stretch your neck to a point just before you feel that it's going to pop. So you're still giving a nice stretch through there, but you're not going past that threshold to get that cavitation. So we're just giving the joint a chance to just lightly stiffen up a little bit just to give it a bit more security, or just to get it keep it a little bit more secure and slightly stiffer, so that the muscles around it can work as well. And then after that, yes, definitely strengthening around the joint, around the muscles surrounding the joint, that could be quite helpful as well. Sometimes, yes, you might accidentally go a little bit too far past the threshold and you feel the pop. That's absolutely fine as well. But as much as you can, try and stay just to that limit so you don't go past it.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be super helpful, I think, for a lot of people. I also know a lot of people who they've got sort of a tight back, and then they get their friends to, give them a big squeeze and a bit of a pop on the back to make it feel better. What are your thoughts around that?
So
can that be dangerous?
I don't think it's dangerous per se. I mean, you see plenty of people doing it around, in the gym, in the sports studio, and so on. I guess if you don't know what you're doing, then definitely it can be dangerous. The classic example of people doing it for each other would be in the library, for say. You've got you've got students or you've got people just sitting in the library studying for long periods. Your body's stuck in that slouch sitting posture for a good few hours. Then when you stand up, everything's just so stiff. Right, get your friend, give you a crack, straighten up. There's a nice relaxation of the muscles around it, and things do feel a little bit more comfortable. But then you go back and sit there again after lunch, and you sit for another 4 hours studying again. And then once again, like we said before, it's that whole cycle again of tightening up, crack, feels good for a bit. Right, sit back down, and then you tightening up again.
Yeah, so if you were having that sort of vicious cycle starting to happen, you definitely want to sort of seek some professional help, would you say, or you definitely need to look at your balance imbalance?
And even just real basic posture as well. Just sitting up straight and not letting your spine hunch over too much and not getting too slouched over your seat. Yep.
Awesome, mate. Hey, thanks a million for that one. The next question we've got, and it sort of leads in nicely from the last one, is about stretching. When should you use dynamic versus static stretching?
Right, so static or passive stretching is sort of a type of stretch, I guess, to help maintain or improve flexibility. So what I recommend for sort of static type stretches, definitely as part of cool down, because, for example, say you've done a big squat session, and so lactic acid build up, you get a muscle pump in your quads, for example. Just a nice stretch just to try and relieve some pressure in the muscle can help. So definitely a part of cool down, just even flexibility as well. So say at the end of the day before you go to bed, that could be quite helpful. So you're lengthening the muscle, and then you go to bed so when you're lying down on your bed, there's no gravity on you, and so we can potentially use that to try and maintain a little bit more of the mobility changes that we have got after doing a bout of static stretching before you go to bed. Dynamic stretching, that can be as a warm-up, say prior to sports participation. It can or may help to decrease the risk of injury by improving dynamic flexibility of the muscle groups. So you see football and rugby, for example, they're doing those leg swings just to get the body used to that stretch reflex, getting the muscles ready to move, ready to be primed to perform whatever movements they need to do. So those would be my two views on dynamic and static stretching.
Yeah,
you definitely
awesome.
want to do static stretching before a workout, because you are changing the nature of the muscles neurophysiologically, and so you don't want if you say squat session, if you stretch the muscles too much, the body's not used to the new flexibility. It can't handle the new flexibility of the muscle, can't handle the load that you're going to put it through, and so you're going to be putting yourself at a potential risk of injury.
Yeah, because static stretching's been shown to decrease force production, hasn't it, during exercise?
That's right.
Yep. And then also, say for an endurance athlete, this is where I sometimes would be the exception to the rule. I'm not sure if you would agree, is that, say if you've got a runner and they've got a tight hip flexor or like an imbalance between the left and the right, the only time I'd use a static stretch before training would be, say in that example, to just get that range of movement back to sort of where it should be. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely to a certain degree. So, for example, even so even in the rehab setting as well, we want, say for example, what would be the best way? Say a calf flexibility, for example. One calf is a lot stiffer than the other. If we don't address the mobility issue, they're going to be walking around or training with an asymmetry between left and right. So I want to get it to a base level of symmetry first before I get them performing the exercise.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. So that would be the time that you'd potentially use some static stretching before training, even though we know static stretching decreases force production, power output, but there is times where it could be used.
Yeah, I guess static stretching, maybe static stretching in the sense of the word will be more for flexibility, whereas what we want to try and get is mobility. So there's a slight difference between flexibility and mobility, and so I want to get a bit more mobility for the muscle. For example, a light bout of foam rolling or joint molds, for example, before doing the exercise.
So, stretching before exercise is often people refer to, to do it, static stretching before exercise, to reduce the risk of injury. And we know now with good authority that stretching before exercise does not reduce the risk of injury. Is that your same line of thinking as well?
Yeah, definitely. Stretching before exercise will definitely not. I mean, there's so many other factors, and we cannot contribute stretching to be related to a decreased risk of injury for exercise. Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. So I think what people need to potentially do is reframe the thinking behind why they're doing their mobility, their stretching before exercise, whether it be dynamic or static, and get into the mindset of it's for performance enhancement or maximizing gains in a training session versus the old adage of reducing injury.
Yeah, and I guess you could add joint mobility to this group of static stretching, passive stretching, or dynamic stretching, or even joint mobility as well. So dynamic stretching, I guess you'd be more for in terms of muscles, whereas joint mobility is going to help the joint improve joint movement through the range as well. And so when you're doing a joint mobilization, we are trying to increase input to the nervous system as well by increasing range. Whereas static stretching, you think more sort of for recovery, and you want to hold it for a prolonged period of time, say 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean so why would you recommend 2 minutes? Can you sort of expand a little bit on the why behind that time frame?
I guess 2 minutes is an arbitrary number, but you do want a decent amount of time to try and get some change in the muscle. And an analogy that I've given for clients has been, say for example, you tilt your head to one side for say 10 or 15 seconds, and you bring it back to the middle. Your neck feels all good. Doesn't feel like anything has changed. You sleep with your neck twisted for 8 hours. When you wake up the next morning, you get a stiff neck. So something has changed, right? some muscular properties have changed in the muscle. So, I mean, I'm not going to get you to stretch for 8 hours, but you do want a decent amount of time to get some change in the muscle at least. So yes, 2 minutes is an arbitrary number, but sort of I use a minimum of 2 minutes as just a ballpark figure.
Yeah, okay, cool. So 2 minutes is a good starting point, a minimum if you like.
Yeah, I mean you've got things like ROMWOD and yoga stuff that can hold a stretch for say 3 to 5 minutes even.
Yeah, okay.
So, so 2 minutes would just be a nice introduction starting point, I think.
Awesome, mate. What about in terms of endurance athletes? I usually find endurance athletes, tend to have a similar set of problems, if you like, when it comes to, body maintenance and injuries and little niggles and that sort of thing. For you and the endurance athletes that you come across, what would be the sort of general biggest bang for your buck that you would recommend for them? Say your top 3, perhaps.
In terms of stretches or in terms of just recommendations?
Yeah, just general recommendations, I think, for them to get the most out of themselves.
Cool. So I think one thing, especially for our everyday endurance athlete, would be strength. So I guess a lot of people, no, that's wrong. It's wrong to say a lot of people, but there are a few athletes who underestimate the importance of strength. Yes, you need to do your reps. You need to accumulate your mileage for, say, a triathlon, for example. Yes, you need to accumulate your laps in the pool, your swimming. You need to accumulate your distance on the bike and your running. But it's important not to forget about strength as well. Strength is so important just to make sure that your body can handle the load as well. So strength, definitely a strengthening program, say in the off season, would be quite good to help with handling the loads that the body's going through. So that'll be one. Does it sound right?
Yeah, mate, for sure. Strength training in the off season over the winter time is ideal. Ideal time to start cracking into it now, with it being the end of season for most Southern Hemisphere athletes as well.
Yeah, I used to see this ultra marathon runner, and so in the off season, he will go for easy runs, but he sets himself a 3-month block purely strength training. He absolutely smashes his legs and to a certain degree his upper body as well, but that whole 3-month block is just purely dedicated for strength stuff.
Yep.
So his mileage is real low, but he gets his strength up then after that, so that he knows he's got his base level of strength, and then once that finishes, then he starts back on his running again.
Yeah, I think a lot of endurance athletes are particularly a little afraid of the gym, or they can't understand why they would go and lift some weight and perform resistance training in the gym when it is so different to their actual sport. And I think a lot of people don't understand that they're not so much trying to get better at running in your terms of their ultra endurance athlete that you're talking about before, but to strengthen everything up so that they can do more of their specific training. So it's not just the muscles, it's the tendons, the ligaments.
Yes.
Those are some of the first things to start to blow out when you start to do high volume training.
Yeah, I've heard someone say before that they were afraid that they get too bulky when they do strength training, and then that might impede their bike or their running. They don't want to be carrying extra weight when they're running and so on.
Yeah, big time. And if you do the right type of strength training, you can increase your power production, and you don't get any change in muscle mass, or you don't get any change in VO2 max either. So you don't increase your bulk, you don't change your aerobic capacity, but you still get stronger.
Yeah.
And I think on the cards for the next couple of podcast episodes, we're going to do a big focus on strength training and the how-to and the whys behind it for endurance athletes.
Sounds excellent.
So that was number one. Point number one is get into some strength training. What would be your tip number 2 for endurance athletes?
I guess my number two would be just to listen to your body. So in terms of load monitoring and recovery strategies as well. So yes, you've got a training program, and I say this sort of carefully because I'm not an endurance athlete myself. I know you've got for the athlete. Yes, I know your coach has set you a set training program. You've got to do X mileage, or you've got to perform whatever movements and whatever distance for how long. But if your body's not up to it, say you're working, you've got family life and so on, you've got other things out of sport, and if you're not feeling up to it, there's no point. And once again, I say this very carefully. There's no point pushing through the training session because your body might not thank you for it down the track.
100%. I mean, that's, coming from me as a coach as well, and that I write the training program for the athlete, and to be honest, you don't know exactly how much they can handle, and depending on their level, there's always you're walking that fine line with elite athletes of doing enough and doing too much. There's a very fine line there, and on paper, it's really easy to put out, this is what we're going to do, but a good training program and a good coach should be refining that based on how the athlete is tracking and how they are feeling, So that load monitoring and just listening to your body is so crucial, and it should almost be, at the elite level, a day-to-day thing. You sort of come in, see how the athlete's feeling, and we review their training that they're going to do on that day based on, how they're responding to it.
Yeah, I mean, lately there's been a lot on, I guess in the media and on the internet, there's been a lot on heart rate variability monitoring.
Yeah. Yep.
And and just sort of how that responds to stresses and training stresses and lifestyle stresses as well.
Yeah, big time. Heart rate variability is a great tool to monitor your training. But I think a lot of people as well, you don't have to rush out and invest in anything. It's just being a little bit more in tune with your body as well, like you say. Just how are you feeling today? It's a question that I ask every one of my athletes, the elite athletes that I work with on a daily basis, and then the other athletes, the weekend warriors on a weekly basis. And I'm pretty sure they get sick of me asking you, how are you feeling? They probably feel like I'm their counselor or something.
Yeah.
But the question, how are you feeling, gives me a great insight into, how their body's responding and how they are responding to the training load.
Yeah, there's this physiotherapist in Australia that I've done a bit of work with. When he used to work with the China women's volleyball team, he's got a few just a few questions. And then the answers have got scores attached to it. So if you're under a certain score, right, you've got to go easier training today. You're feeling pretty good, cool. You can do a harder training today.
Yeah, exactly right, mate. And also that question of how you're feeling is a bit of a gateway question as well. They think, I'm not feeling that great. Then you can start looking into, why are you not feeling great? And was it your sleep last night? Was it this? Was it that? So I think, like you say, that's that point number 2 about listening to your body and getting in tune with it is a really important skill to have as an athlete.
Yeah, and so recovery strategies we include, so listen to the body, we include recovery strategies and like what we talked about, stretching, mobility work, getting treatment, making sure that you're moving properly, and so on. So these all come together with listening to your body, I guess.
Yeah, awesome, mate. And what would you say point number 3 would be in terms for endurance athletes, general recommendations for them?
Number 3 is something which I don't have much experience in, but I know is important, and that would be nutrition. So that's definitely not my field, but I do know that nutrition is nutrition plays a big role in just how our bodies react as well, really.
Yeah, for sure. And even like on a structural level, in terms of, your work as a physiotherapist, if you're trying to, rehab an injury, having the right ingredients in the tank is crucial to, build more muscles, tendons and ligaments.
Yeah, I guess nutrition. I guess you could put hydration with that as well. A lot of us, me included, especially in the wintertime, don't drink as much as we should.
Yep. And being inside as well with, the heat on is, and during winter, you're probably almost exposed to more heat than you are during the summer.
Yeah. And then, when you drink water, you don't want to drink water because sometimes when the water that comes out of the water cooler is colder as well, and it just makes everything worse.
Yeah, classic. So one sort of issue I have with the majority of endurance athletes I work with is super tight through the anterior hip.
Mm-hmm.
So just really tight hip flexors because of, time on the bike, time in the kayak, running, just tweaks them up big time. What would be your go-to fixes for really tight hip flexors?
I guess a few. One of them would be banded hip mobilization mobs. I will send you a couple of links. That might work a bit better, so that I guess your listeners can have a kind of a visual as well. That could be quite good.
Yeah, that'd be really good, mate. It's kind of hard to describe some of the stuff as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'll send you a few links. A few of them are with that physio that I talked about. So he's done a bit of he sort of mentored me a little bit, and he's done some pretty good videos on hip mobility work as well. So I'll send it in a link to you, and you can attach that somewhere for your listeners as well.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'll post a link to that in the show notes over at the Exponential Performance Coaching website so everyone can check it out.
Sounds good.
Awesome, mate. So we've got one last question. It's quite a long one, so I'll kick into it and we'll probably tackle it in a few different parts.
Sure.
So this question comes from a listener. It says, I'm 40 years old. I was a rower at Oxford University and then raced bikes in my late 20s, early 30s. Oh, mate, I'm thinking we've had a systems failure here. Ha! Bloody hell. We might... No, I'm thinking it might have froze on me. We're back with Josh Ong from Focus Physio. Sorry about the technical difficulties we had, but we're back here a day later, and we're going to tick off this question for you guys. So, the question was, just as a bit of a recap, this guy emailed in saying he's 40 years old, he was a rower at university, raced bikes in his late to early 20s, but then the old story of kids and work took over. He's always had problem with lower back pain, and it's just usually an ache most of the time, but once or twice a year it gets really, really painful to the point where he can't sleep, exercise, or just do normal things like sitting and walking very well at all. So he's saying he used to use a mix of different types of training, cycling, football, gym training, to mix things up. But recently he went to see a chiropractor, and they think the problem is muscular in terms of an imbalance, and it's not a disc or a nerve related problem. So with that in mind, Josh, what's your view on chiropractic treatment? And he says here particularly the McTimoney method. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So what's your view on chiropractic treatment?
Yeah, I really like chiropractic treatment. Like I think I mentioned before, I've had the privilege of working in an osteopathic clinic and a chiropractic clinic before as well, and so I've got full appreciation of what osteopaths and chiropractors do. So I definitely do think that chiropractic has value to it. I guess a lot of it depends on where you're from as well. For example, generally speaking, if you're in the States, chiropractic is more recognized. If you're in the UK, for example, osteopathy is a bit more recognized as well. So the physio, chiropractic, and osteopath all work together to look at the body as a whole, how the body functions, and how the body can heal or improve performance as a whole. So in terms of chiropractic treatment, yeah, I'll say if chiropractic works for you, go for it, because I do believe it can work, and there are some really stunning chiropractors out there. Chiropractors are just really experts in spinal manipulation and just how they see the spine and how they work. I really fully appreciate how in depth and how precise the handling of some chiropractors are.
With that in mind, so what's the difference, if you don't mind explaining, between a chiropractor and an osteopath?
Cool. So, there. No, I once again I say this with a pinch of salt. There is a bit of gray area. So chiropractors are I guess traditionally known as clinicians who specialize in the spine and how the spine can heal itself. So I guess spine and nervous system. Whereas osteopaths also look at the body as a whole, but they do have they do talk about visceral, so which is the organs, and soft tissue stuff as well. So there is a bit of sort of overlap, I guess. They do both clinicians, both professions do things like spinal manipulations, looking at the body as a whole, but maybe just depending on which school you're from as well, they just have slightly different philosophies.
Yep, for sure. And taking that a step further, what's the difference then between, say, a chiropractor, osteopath, and then a physiotherapist?
Right. So, so I was saying traditionally, chiropractors are known more for spinal manipulations and the nervous system. Osteopaths, I guess, soft tissue, visceral, and spine as well, looking at the body as a whole. And traditionally, physios were very exercise based, but then now we're getting more hands-on techniques as well. For example, my master's was taught by an osteopath. So, I have dabbled in a few he's taught us some osteopathy techniques. I've worked in a chiropractic clinic as well. So I've also learned some chiropractic techniques as well. So for me personally, for example, I'm qualified as a physio, but I've dabbled in a few osteopathy sort of experiences and chiropractic experiences as well.
So being a physiotherapist, does it give you the skill set to explore things a little wider versus the more how do I want to say this? Whereas an osteopath and a chiropractor are more specialized or not so well, defined, but whereas a physio can implement a whole different range of techniques depending on the problems. Is that right?
Actually, I'll say that everyone, physios, osteos, or chiros, can implement same techniques. Just I guess you've got your base training, and it's how much you want to explore and how much you want to develop further. Like I've inquired to go to a few chiropractic courses or osteopathy weekend courses, and same thing. There's some courses that I've been to, and there are osteopaths and chiropractors at the same course as me as well in a physio course. So I guess a lot of it is how much the clinician wants to explore and how much they want to develop their own skill set.
Okay. And if you with any industry, there's always going to be cowboys out there, and if you had to sort of list off a couple of things that people should look for when they're looking for, whether it be a chiropractor, osteopath, physio, massage therapist, what would your key things be that people should look for to find a good one?
Right. So I guess one of them should be that they are not afraid to say that they don't know. I guess the big thing is that like say cowboys. A lot of clinicians now are just afraid of losing clients, and so they want to try and keep their clients rather than referring them out in case if I refer you to them and they work better for you, then you might not come back and then I might lose business. But that's not what it's about. It's all about the patient, and if the other clinician, their style of treatment works better for you, then go for it. Just stay with him.
Yep. Okay.
So that'll be my one. Number two, I guess, when the clinician is explaining stuff to you, sort of explaining what's wrong, what he thinks is wrong, or explaining exercises. Simple is the best. We don't want to. I guess there's no point trying to sound real scientific using big jargon words and trying to impress the client, because it doesn't mean anything. So just really keeping it simple, just explaining in real simple terms. If you can explain in simple terms to let the client understand things better, then it's a win-win.
Yeah, I think that's really key, in terms of sometimes people obviously do it deliberately to try and, come off smart, or to, state their expertise in the area. But I think a lot of people just do it out of habit, because they're in the industry, and all the talk day to day with colleagues, and whether they're reading or listening, that's what the terms are the terms, because that's what they are. And I think people need to get out of their own head and start thinking on the ground, like you say, with the patients, and how can we explain it simply so that they understand it.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, nice one, mate. And what would your number 3 be, if you had to give a third one of things to look for a good provider?
I think just a sense of professionalism. Just being real professional with regards to how you whether you're treating a grandmother, a parent, or a kid. Still, I mean, sure, you've got to adjust your style slightly differently, but still exhibiting that sense of professionalism, whether no matter who you're working on, and whether you're addressing a child, or a parent, or a grandparent, just making sure you're polite, and just explaining things, the way you interact with them, the way you interact with potential, say they bring in a family member, or they bring in a partner, just even how you interact with the partner as well. That's really important, I think.
But I think that comes back, like, physiotherapy is a really personal thing, isn't it? Like, every physio I've had, and I've had quite a number of different physios throughout the year, and there's people that you just really click with, and that you really like, and there's others that may know their stuff really well. They may, have all the certificates on the wall, but when it comes down to it, it's just
people skills.
It doesn't click.
Yeah, and just people skills, really.
And I suppose surgeons, they always term the people with the worst bedside manner in the medical industry.
That's right.
But their patients are always asleep, aren't they, when they're doing the job?
Right. Yeah. And then when patients wake up, they don't even know what's happened.
Yeah, exactly right. No, it's classic. And then, so if we go back to this question, we sort of digressed a little bit there.
Yeah.
But so for the relief of lower back pain, and for this sort of guy in general that sent this question, and what would your recommendations be? What could he do to fix this, do you think, or at least help it along the way to alleviate that lower back pain?
So I'll say one thing that I found quite helpful for patients is just to have a good screen. So go to someone that like, so for me personally, for example, I use the functional movement screen quite a bit, and it's just a standardized screen, for myself. So I know I just have a baseline of where my patients are at. And so, because, say for example, if you've gone to different, say you've gone into osteopath, the chiropractor, or physio, for example, all three might tell you slightly different things. But if you've got one standard screen, you sort of know you're coming from the same page, and you sort of know where your base flaws or restrictions or your limitations are, and then you just work from there, working through potentially maybe that you've got some muscles that are a little bit tight, some joints that are a little bit stiff, and so once you get some form of symmetry, then you can start loading the pattern up, loading the muscle, starting to get stronger as well. So I would say definitely my first port of call would be just to get a screen, just to know where you are in the spectrum first, so you know how you can progress as well.
So when you say a screen, you're talking about a movement screen. So what does that involve just in general? So a person comes to you to get a screen. What are you doing with them?
So I'll do a couple of movements. For example, an overhead squat movement, a step movement, a lunge movement, checking their shoulder mobility, checking their straight leg raise, seeing if they can do a push-up, seeing if they can do like a plank, prone hold type movement. So just a few basic movements just to get a really, really brief gauge to see where they are at that point in time.
Nice. So a little bit of a warrant of fitness, so to speak, looking through, seeing how they're moving, and if there are any warning signs of things that aren't moving properly, so that that may be the contributor to the pain that they're getting.
Yeah, definitely. So for example, if I get you doing a squat, for example, so there's no weight at all, just holding a stick above your head and squatting, and you've got pain, right? We need to address the pain because pain modifies movement. You're gonna make compensations around the pain. So rather than nothing down and going through the pain, let's take a step back first and find out what's causing the pain, and addressing that, and then potentially we can help make your pattern and make your movement a lot smoother and more comfortable.
Yeah, nice. And then, so following on from a movement screen, what do you think this person's next step should be after that? Is there anything that they can do, say, at home that would help alleviate back pain? Not really knowing what the problem is, because you obviously haven't seen them, but...
I guess the screen tells you a lot. For example, if you can't do say, for example, if you can't put your hands behind your back, for example, right? Potentially, we need to work on our trunk, our upper back, get that moving a little bit easier. Working through the muscles in the front of our chest, working through the muscles in the front of our shoulder. Those are stuff we can do. Or for example, if you can't do a squat or a lunge, right? Maybe you've got tight quads, so we need to you've got some stretches that you can do at home. Stretches for say quads, hamstring, or glutes, for example.
Nice, and you'll send. I think we talked about that yesterday. You'll send some of those through so that we can, so that everyone can check those out.
Definitely.
Awesome, mate. That's fantastic, mate. Thank you so much for answering that question. Hopefully, that's helped the listeners out there. Just
do you want me to?
Sorry, mate. Go ahead.
Do you want me? I think one of the questions before that was about the McTimoney method as well.
Yeah, what is the McTimoney method? Talk me through that.
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I did do a bit of research, and it just looks like it is another form of chiropractic treatment. Potentially, it might be I guess it's just a different style of adjustment or manipulation. Some reviews said that it is a little bit gentler than traditional chiropractic treatment, whatever that means. And I say that because some chiropractors have a bad rep for being really rough. But then on the other hand, I've worked with some chiropractors who've got hands like angels. Their hands, their handling skills are just so gentle, but yet they feel so much. So I'm not entirely sure about the McTimoney method. What I can find is just it is another form of chiropractic treatment. And like with any treatment, osteopathy, acupuncture, massage, physio, to be honest, just what works for you, really.
Yeah, right. And
I would never say go to chiropractor and not an osteopath or physio or vice versa, because everyone works in different styles, and whatever style you respond best to, just stick with it.
Awesome, yeah, different horses for courses, eh?
Yeah.
Brilliant, mate. Hey, and with this question that was asked, they was also asked, how often do you think you should get sports massage?
I guess a lot of it depends on your type of training, intensity of training, I guess. You could put massage under, I guess, your personal warrant of fitness, I guess. So people get it, say, once every 6 weeks, once every 2 months. Whereas you got people who are in season and they like to get it once every month.
Yep.
There is not much evidence on how massage can potentially help. I mean, who knows? Majority of it might be psychological. just makes the client or the athlete feel a little bit better, and that plays a huge role as well.
Which is the aim at the end of the day, isn't it? To feel better
as well. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, I wanted to ask one last question before we go, and this is one I didn't give you with the wee brief before we jumped on the call, and it's one that I want to start asking our guests. But what is one thing that people disagree with you about? Is there something that you're a little bit controversial, or something that people disagree in your approaches or anything?
Me personally?
Yeah, you personally.
Let's see. To be honest, I haven't had too much controversy in my treatments, actually. I think, like I said before, I just like to keep things simple.
Mm-hmm.
Don't like to complicate things too much. I can't say I can think of any at the moment, to be honest.
Yep, because I definitely think you're an extremely open physiotherapist in terms of you always seem to be exploring different modalities, and you're going completely outside the box even, and going and getting amongst some powerlifters and a bunch of other stuff that are sort of outside of your field, if you like, to get those experiences.
Yeah, because I always believe that in order to treat clients, you've got to know what they're going through at least, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess I guess when I first started, when I was working on a CrossFit coach way back in CrossFit Dunedin, and I was playing volleyball at that time, competitive volleyball, and once the season finished, he was badgering me to come in and just try it. So I came in, tried a few classes, and I must say I did enjoy it. I thought it was really fun, and so that sort of opened my eyes to different movements, things like the Olympic lifting and so on. Mm-hmm. And so that's how the gym started referring some clients over, because I sort of had a better understanding of how the clients move and why they got injured, and how to prevent it, or how to help them move a little bit better. And same thing once. That's how I started to know some of the CrossFitters who have now gone into powerlifting, and I've done a few things with them. Attended a few of the strongman classes with them as well, just to once again just understand how the movements go and how the movements work, and how the body responds to it, really. So just that's something I sort of pride myself, I guess, to just open my eyes, and just open my eyes but be cynical at the same time. Mm-hmm. But just to learn and understand. Yeah, I mean, definitely there's no better way of learning than experiencing, is there? Well, we might, in saying that, mate, we might have to get you signed up for some big endurance race. Yeah, maybe one day, once the kids grow older.
Oh, mate, you can train for endurance on short amounts of time, eh? I'll get you there.
Yeah.
Awesome, Josh. Hey, thanks so much for joining me on the line, mate, and I look forward to having a catch up again in the future.
No, most definitely. Thanks very much for having me.
Well, there you have it, team. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Josh Ong. If you've got any follow-up questions for Josh, please send me an email, post them in the comments section, whatever it is, leave me a voice message, and we'll get him back on the show to answer a few more questions. All of the resources that we mentioned in today's podcast will be over at exponentialperformancecoaching.com under the podcast tab, in the show notes under this episode 8. If you've got any questions or topics you'd like to see covered in future podcasts, head over to the Exponential Performance Coaching website and leave me a voice message about them. I'd be greatly appreciated, and I'll do my best to get you the information that you need so that you can train hard but train smart. Until next time, get out there, give it heaps. I'll talk to you next week.